Jason, it's been a long time coming on this one. I think when we initially started talking about this idea was at this point, probably 4 or 5 months ago. And with as much attention as digital out of home is getting, with as much attention as retail media is getting, specifically using programmatic pipes to access the inventory, launch campaigns, I don't know that there's really a better time than now to have that conversation. So what do you say? Ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome to Out of Home Insider, the first podcast for media and marketing executives that connects how offline attention drives conversion. My name is Tim Rowe, and for the past 3 years, I've been interviewing guests about their unique insights in bridging this misunderstood and undervalued opportunity for brands to create alchemy in the real world. If you've been looking for a primer on the state of programmatic digital out-of-home adoption, and specifically the dynamics at play within brands and agencies, then this is the episode you've been looking for, because today's guest is Jason Eckerling. Jason breaks down what it looks like from the inside out and how omnichannel strategies and agency economics are leading the way for more programmatic digital out-of-home adoption, and how publishers have to think about their sales motion when considering all of the stakeholders that may need to be involved, which may ultimately lead you to asking the question of, is the juice worth the squeeze? And depending on where you sit in the conversation, that answer may be different than the person next to you. So that's the big idea I'd like you to consider in this episode. How do you balance skating to the puck, that is, understanding where the market is going, while retaining focus on where it is today? So without further ado, let's go.
Welcome, everybody, to the Out of Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
All right, so for folks that don't know, you were co-founder of a company called Billboarder. It was an online marketplace. By all accounts, I just know what other people told me. You guys had some pretty great technology, and something that we'll talk about later on in this conversation, the relevancy of a hot deals marketplace, especially in the current market environment that we're in. But why is programmatic digital out of home so relevant right now in the marketing conversation? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for the relevancy is that more and more media is being pushed omnichannel, and more agencies are pushing dollars through their DSP partners. It streamlines budgets, teams, pushing more that way. It's from an agency standpoint, a buyer standpoint. That's one of the big reasons. And frankly, it's easier. And out of home has notoriously has long cancellation policies and all that stuff that make it make it a little bit harder. So in unstable environments and uncertain economic times, it makes perfect sense to push more and more to programmatic and have the flexibility there. And that was one of the biggest benefits of COVID that you saw in the industry was the rise of programmatic a lot due to that, just because
uncertainty,
movement patterns change. No one's in office, no one's driving to work. All that stuff made it much more effective to use programmatic.
But you credited really the shift to an omni-channel marketing approach as leading the way, and then really programmatic digital out of home being the beneficiary of a trickle down from that. What's leading the omni-channel push? Is it the iOS 14.5 walled gardens? Everything's harder. What's kind of the driving force behind that, do you think?
It's agencies. It's agency economics.
Agency economics.
That's where they're going to make their money, less overhead and easier activations. That'll not to mention all the benefits you get from an omni-channel platform and being able to pull everything together and look at a whole campaign holistically. Not that individual point solution DSPs don't have their place, and they absolutely do. And the specialists who are working with those, they absolutely have their place. But as more and more goes omni-channels, that's just, they have greater budgets. That they need to move dollars around. CTV is incredibly expensive. and clients are going to need to diversify and find other channels. So ultimately, that will lead to a benefit for out of home.
That makes sense. And when we were talking last, you kind of drew the distinction between the programmatic teams and the out of home teams, and they each have their own budgets. And ideally, the programmatic team is going to consult with the out of home team when doing programmatic out of home. But there's very much a divide between the team buying programmatic digital out of home at large from a big agency perspective and the team that's executing traditional out of home as we know it. Can you describe that relationship, just what that looks like inside of an agency so folks can understand?
What's really interesting, it is very different at every agency and every holdco, and different within certain agencies within the same holdco. So from a publisher standpoint, a sales standpoint, and I've had a lot of these conversations recently, it's incredibly challenging that you don't just have a salesperson who's going to go call on Kinetic or Publicis or Report, whatnot. You need to now call on digital teams, programmatic teams. Planning teams strategy teams should always have been called on, but now it's people can activate different ways. So in different holding company worlds, they can go through an out-of-home team. They can go through the programmatic team, might be able to do it themselves. Sometimes programmatic team might need to consult with the out-of-home team, or they should be. There's political things going back and forth. So there's all these different things. So it's even harder for publishers to sell in and figure out how to sell in, because they need to talk to this person, they need to talk to this person. So-and-so might have more money for it, but then they might get mad and they might fight over it. So in every agency and holdco is different of how they activate. Some have it figured out. Some, some it's still kind of a free for all of who controls it and who controls the digital out of home dollars.
How much? I'm sure the out of home teams are obviously buying digital out of home, but do you have a sense of, or could you maybe just for the context, because the audience is so driven from the business development community of out of home. Can you give us an idea, the out of home specialist teams that are buying digital out of home, are they buying a lot of programmatic? Are they doing programmatic in the same way? When we talk about programmatic, it's this digital dynamic delivery of impressions to an audience. And we're mostly talking about programmatic online teams that are just trying to serve impressions to an audience. How much programmatic buying is actually being done by out of home specialists?
It's still quite, compared to, I don't have a number, I would say, compared to digital out of home. So like what they're spending programmatically versus what they're buying digitally direct. So like a digital Times Square, it's direct. I don't know, but the programmatic number is still sitting 6%, whatever that latest number is right now. It's probably going to be around that same real low percentage. Out of all their digital spend, it's hard to say. Like if you're buying, if you're Coke or someone and you have a traditional campaign going, you might not, you have a buy with larger billboards. You're not going to exclude necessarily digital billboards if you have a direct contract with that publisher, that vendor. But everything else digital, it just starts to make sense to do some of that programmatic. And there's, there are companies out there and agencies out there who will, they're going to do all their direct stuff, whether it's digital billboards and that, they'll do all that direct, but everything else, all the place-based stuff, they'll just buy it programmatically. They'll do it for a point solution, and there are people who do that. So it's hard to say. It goes both ways, and every agency is different.
So for a digital network, let's say somebody who's got inventory and they want to sell it, they want to make it available to brands, to these agencies. How do you manage that? How do you manage that sales conversation and all those elements? And then, of course, I'm sure it comes down to, let's say you got the meeting and you got to all those people. You've still got to be available on whatever DSP, however they're buying it. You still have to be available. There's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah, and most, the big SSPs out there, Place Exchange, Start, they're comparable from a media standpoint. At this point, there really isn't anything out there. There are little new networks popping up, whoever gets on what first and things like that. But they're pretty comparable from a publisher standpoint, at least in the U.S. Everyone's growing differently internationally and where they're putting their focus and whatnot. But in the U.S., it's pretty comparable. So then becomes how the buyer wants to activate and what DSP they're using, whether it's Trade Desk, Vistar, Hivestack, DV360, and whatnot. So or Yahoo even. So you can use any of those SSPs in those DSPs. So it just becomes a factor of what they're buying. But from a pub standpoint, it's at the point where it's like each agency within a holdco needs their own sales strategy. Like they're all operating so differently and of how they're activating programmatic out of home that you need to have a different approach for each one. Because the same one is just not going to work for Kinetic or Rapport or this or that. They're just operating all differently now.
Okay. So with that being said, it's complex. We'll say it's complex. So say you are one of those digital networks. What would be your advice to them? Is the juice worth the squeeze of going through all of that? Is it just make yourself known and do great marketing? How do you differentiate as a publisher in that landscape?
So, for one, you need to be in with the out-of-home teams. Like there's whether the out-of-home team wants to buy you direct or programmatic, that's fine, but they are the knowledge experts at the agency. So you need to be in with them. Starting something new and not being in with them is, you're going to have a long road to climb. They are, even if you get to a planning team or a digital team and it's something new, most likely they're going to go back to an expert just to see what's going on with this. Is this stuff true? Are they talking, is it legit and whatnot? So you need to get in with those teams. You need to be in with those teams. And then figuring out, if you're going after a certain account, you got to figure out how they're activating, how they're buying, who's controlling the dollars. Is it the planning team that's going to control dollars and decide to go do the out-of-home team or digital or programmatic team? So, it's a lot of legwork. If you're a new network coming in, it's a lot of legwork to get in with the agencies. And, it is easier at first to get in with an out-of-home team just because it is one, it's one place. And they will work on lots of accounts versus a planning team that might be on one or two accounts.
Flipping this on its head a little bit, we've talked about the big brands, the national presence, and really, I think most folks would agree that kind of national sets the tempo for what's happening and trickling down to the local markets, and right, everything is kind of in that chain. Programmatic at the local level, it's not necessarily something that we've seen or talked a lot about. I remember sitting in a sales office in Eastern Pennsylvania when I was at Adams, and the mention of programmatic had a lot of senior sales reps kind of terrified, like, what my $2 million account is going to go buy all this stuff on the internet and I'm going to be out of a job. Where does programmatic stand locally?
It's still slow. And even, it's still slow, but I think there is such a big long tail potential there for it to grow. Like, when I think of it as like, you look at tier 2 and tier 3 auto, like for them, those guys spend how much money on local news, local TV news the last time you watched that, but it's like, how easy will it for them to be? All right, we can start targeting, every screen around our dealer and every screen around our competitors dealers, and do it whenever we want and whatever time of day and whatever triggers or whatever we want to do. Might pay a little bit more, but also that's a lot less overhead than doing this all directly. And you only see, you only see things like that just doing billboards and TV and things like that. But it's really to expand that footprint and really do that. So when you start to see things like that, and utilizing a lot more of the digital media and a lot more of that place-based media that is around locally and in the suburbs and outside the cities, that's when I think you'll start to see that shift as you get into easier ways for them to buy, whether it's local news if they're starting to add on and buy things like that, or resell programmatic as an option, or it's more other companies who specialize in more local regional stuff and not necessarily national advertisers doing that. When you start to see that, I think you'll start to see the long tail, and it's just going to be slower. And but I think eventually it'll get there. And I think that'll be, a big win for the industry.
And thank you for using the automotive example there. That's where I come from. I come from the car business, ironically. And gosh, what a testimony to exactly that of the tier 3 automotive dealer. I mean, as recently as 2019, an average dealer that I worked with was spending $20,000 to $30,000 a month on TV, on television. And
right.
Some of that budget should be going to out of home, of course, and some of that budget should be going to programmatic digital out of home specifically, whether that was the average dealer. So this was 2019. So if my data is dated, then you can just chalk it up to that. So that's a little bit old information, but at that time I was working with 12 different dealer groups and had about a $7 million book of business. So the average dealer was spending around $50,000 a month on television, direct mail, Facebook, Google, email marketing, right? That was kind of the average budget for a dealer at that time. 0 out of home. I didn't buy out of home until well after that stop in my career. It wasn't until further down the road that I was even exposed to out of home. And that was specifically working with tier 3 automotive dealers who have really nice, healthy budgets. It would seem like there's an opportunity for the communication and leadership from an industry standpoint with the local agencies, the agencies that maybe specialize in automotive. Do you see anything? Do you see anyone tapping into that?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm imagining it's happened. And also, look, the past 3 years,
sure,
I've had nothing to sell. So why do I need to advertise when I need to wait to get a car? Pay more than
no cars there.
So I think as that dynamic changes, and especially as more EVs come in next year and things like that, there's going to be the potential for, and you get out of the inventory issues, and once that when that flips, hopefully soon, I think you'll start to see a little bit more funneling that way from tier 2 and tier 3.
What do you see? Let's look into our crystal ball a little bit. We can see some of it coming. Q4, Q1 setup, end of this year, 2023, 2024. There's not a lot going on in the entertainment space. There is a lot going on in the political space. What do you see as far as the tides coming in and coming out?
I mean, with entertainment, entertainment's a lot of people's biggest category, at least,
sure.
The big guys. But what entertainment was doing was interesting is they were, entertainment has started to happen in programmatic in markets they typically hadn't bought big in before. And they were using that to supplement what they do in New York and Chicago and pretty much just top couple markets they would do to promote movies and things. And now what they were doing, they were tapping into programmatic to use that in other markets. They were still doing their big stuff in those markets, but in their perms, all that stuff. But with the strikes going on, Q4, all that stuff's done and dusted. So that stuff will be there. But coming into next year, especially with content and shows that are churned out a lot faster than movies, all that's all that becomes into question. You've got lots of perms. Got lots of available inventory. Depending on how long the strike goes on for, it makes it a lot of opportunity for people like last minute deals and, the milk monies and ad quicks and other things like that of like, all right, there's opportunity there because there's gonna be all this prime inventory that there's not gonna be any entertainment for.
Double click into that. The hot, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but the hot deals, that was something you did in a past life.
Yes. So when we started Billboarder, Billboarder we started in 2015. So similar to other out-of-home startups, the guys who started, who I came on board with, I was initially just helping them out. Similar story, totally different careers or totally different industries, and they got into out-of-home because they had to buy a billboard for something they were doing and saw the process of trying to deal with that for the first time and not knowing anything. And like, this is ridiculous. So then they, had this idea, developed Billboarder. I came on to help them and joined early on. What we did is we built out a last minute deals marketplace. So we'd work with vendors. We'd get last minute deals. We were based in Chicago. And we worked with a lot of the bigger startups in Chicago, like Cameo, Raise, Spot Hero. It's one of our bigger, earlier ones. Really to get new advertisers, really startups who had good funding, who were ready for that consumer push to do out-of-home campaigns and get last-minute deals and prime inventory. Which, working on the local side, you're able to do a lot of ebbs and flows in that based on how the market conditions are. Some of those years were softer than others because it was hot for national advertisers. Others it wasn't. But when you see these up and coming brands or up and coming startups, I should say, who are getting out there and they can get on premium, high profile River North boards in Chicago or in San Francisco, on the heart of San Francisco, for a lot less than what national advertisers are going to do. That was good. It was a good story there.
And you see that similar opportunity right now?
I think coming into next year, depending on what happens with the entertainment industry, absolutely. If entertainment slows down and depending on how long the strike goes for, that's a lot of unsold premium inventory or perms that people will want to get out of.
Sure. At some point, right, there's going to be a backlog here, and it's going to happen at some point. We're just not sure when it's going to happen.
Then we'll be catching up, but who knows? It's going to go on more than 2 months. Who knows? But
and with political, obviously, we're coming fever pitch into political season. Perhaps there's a windfall on that. Political comes in and picks us up.
Yeah, political can pick up some of it, but also a lot of the political advertising also that comes in it becomes more localized. So you don't generally see the politicals on the big premium stuff that comes in where you could see much bigger discounting on than, hey, here's a $4,000 billboard on a suburban road in Pennsylvania or whatever coming outside Philadelphia or whatever that is. Give it a little discount, but they're not going to go below whatever it is. But there's still political definitely can make up some of it, but everyone's planning for political to be big anyway. So
right. We still have to find something to fill in for the piece we didn't plan for.
Everyone wants political money up front too, because no one wants to take on a campaign and then they're out, money's gone, and that's it. So a lot of people are all political payment up front. And
you've got political rate card too. So I guess you can't be like cutting side deals.
You can't be cutting side deals. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. We haven't solved. I guess we didn't solve that piece yet. But there's someone smart out there who's figuring it out.
Piece for political, but people have to work through like the payment terms on that on the side of it.
Something to think through. That is
there was political coming in, but even I would say. What I feel like I saw more was less candidate specific and more initiative focused.
Okay.
So when it's initiative focused going through programmatic, one, it's not candidate specific. So the people are more willing to take different payment terms than they were if it's candidate specific on things like that. So I've seen more initiatives and voting initiatives and whatnot come through.
Great direction for somebody out there that's interested in developing more opportunities in the political space. There you go. Don't spend as much time with the candidates. Look for those opportunities and causes and organizations that want to be involved.
Yeah.
With the last 3 years obviously being an accelerant to programmatic digital out of home, data, measurement, all of these things, what was maybe the biggest surprise in your mind from the past, 36 months or so since the world changed?
I think the biggest surprise is, agencies are slow to adopt. But I think it's, I would want to see more growth and more jumping in. And I think it's been harder for agencies. And I think what the industry has to do is make it super easy for measurement, and we're getting there, and there's more measurement, but really tying all the pieces together, and really making it so everything from an omni-channel world, like it's easy. There's not extra hoops to go through. Like it should just be easy. Oh, we're doing this campaign. We know exactly how it's going to tie in with everything else we're doing. And I think having agencies know how to do that, and I don't think we're quite there yet with DSPs and whatnot, but being able to really show true ROI
Mhm.
And we're getting there, and we're doing that. People are absolutely doing that, and there's a lot of companies doing it, but making it super easy, and making it so it's a no-brainer for agencies. Like, okay, we're doing this. We know how this is going to work with the rest of the campaign, and that's where I think things need to go to really prove out the impact. Like, what I would like to see is, publishers working together, because out of home in and of itself. Okay, this retail network, grocery network, we saw this much sales lift. We can do that. Great. But you know what works even better? This plus billboards plus something else is really what's going to drive the needle. It's not just this retail campaign. And being able for the industry to showcase studies and things around that, why A plus B plus C is going to equal X versus just C equals this. Well, what was going on? People to come together to start doing that is, I think, will be big for the industry.
Shameless plug. You can go to theoohinsider.com, subscribe for the email list, and in exchange for you signing up for the email list, I will send you 5 of my personal favorite case studies I've ever worked on. 5 more coming behind that. So Jason had no idea that I had that one there in the quiver, but thank you for the perfect setup on that. All right. That was the last 3 years in review. What are you most excited about? Next 12, 18 months, what are you most excited about?
I think seeing that come to fruition really is like being able to see how easy out of home measurement can tie to the rest of everything else you're doing, and making that seamless. Like that's what's going to move the needle for agencies. That's going to be the big shift. Whether it's in DSPs, like with the trade desk or whatnot, and really that omni-channel piece, like, just be no brainer. How does out of home affect that? Like everything else we're doing, that's the big shift. That, and I would say, wanting to see that longer local regional piece get into programmatic.
Any thoughts on the media math story? That kind of came out of nowhere.
They've had trouble for a while, but yeah, I mean, it's, there's a lot of shuffling going on. I'm not as well versed into what was going on there, but, the smaller DSPs are running up to Colias, and, they're getting a huge chunk of the business, and there's less room for the others. But yeah, they had, I don't know enough about it really to talk intelligently about it.
Twitter definitely seemed upset and surprised, and that's my general barometer for these sort of things.
I was definitely surprised. I was like, whoa, but
out of nowhere, RKO. Yeah. Just gone just that fast. I think that there's a story in that, and that is, we see some of the consolidation, Adomni, Kubient, right? And how this starts to roll up. Like, either you're going to be consolidated, or you're probably just going to get run over.
Yeah.
I don't know what it all means. I don't know what thoughts on the Adomni Kubient thing. I don't know enough about that one to really comment. I think there's going to be more of it.
Yeah, I feel that one, like, I didn't know enough about Kubient, if I'm saying it right. I feel like it's interesting. Where I was sitting, though, it's like there's just a couple players right now, both
not meaningful.
And like Adomni was doing well, and I think Adomni had a stake in this, in I would say in the regional, less national. Like they definitely did, and there was money coming in from them. Pretty good. Where their foot is, they had a few big accounts, but with brand direct, but I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of players, and you're right. It's going to get consolidated. Like it just has to. You don't need that many DSPs out there for it. So
I got my popcorn. Jason, how do folks get in touch with you? Maybe what have you been up to the last few months? You've been doing consulting work. You've been helping networks get online. You've been kind of behind the scenes. What have you been up to, and how do folks get in touch?
That's basically what I've been doing. Helping out a few networks. Start their sales, help them navigate the out of home world that they're in. Can hit me up on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
But that's kind of what I've been doing the past few months.
Cool.
It's been good.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure to include your LinkedIn so that folks can connect with you. thank you for sharing as much as you have, not just on this episode, but as a friend and over these past few months as we prepared for this. So I could have been more excited to do this with you, and think that we've got something really special here for the audience.
Absolutely. Likewise. It's always good chatting.
Thanks, Jason. And if you found this to be helpful, please share it with somebody who could benefit. As always, make sure to smash that subscribe button. See y'all.
Quarter century, I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows, we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands, cause divided we fall and together we stand.